Palestinian home at Qatanna in the West Bank is destroyed by explosives. According to UN figures, it's one of more than 13,000 properties demolished in the territory by the Israeli army since 2009. The Israeli government states these demolitions primarily target homes connected to people involved in acts of violence. However, UN data shows they also happen when properties lack Israeli-issued construction permits, permits that can be extremely difficult to obtain, as the land is often designated for state, military or settlement use only. The result is a direct clash between the basic housing needs of the Palestinian population and Israel's administrative and planning policies.
Israel is doing everything in order to provoke the Palestinian people, to drag us to violence, but the policy of the PLO, since we signed Oslo Agreement, had been, we are committed to our commitments, which means negotiations, peaceful negotiations on the ground, on the basis and references of the United Nations resolution and the Arab Peace Initiative.
West Bank would be an integral part of any Palestinian state, along with Gaza and East Jerusalem. But Israel is rapidly taking over large areas by moving in and building settlements. Settlements it defends with automatic weapons and the backing of the Israeli army. Settlements have also been called colonies. Israeli citizens cross into Palestinian territory, plant a flag and start to build. At first there will be temporary accommodation called an outpost, but over time these outposts develop into whole towns, heavily guarded and here to stay. This land is not Israel, but has been occupied by the Israeli military since it was seized in the 1967 Six-Day War. Settlements can also include Jewish access roads that fragment Palestinian territory. Settlements have been ruled illegal under international law, but land grabs continue. Latest figures reveal more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank by Israeli forces or civilian settlers, many while resisting settlements in the past 2 years. The Palestinians I travelled with were noticeably wary whenever we saw settlements close by. Palestinian Bedouins like Mohammed have been coerced into leaving land they've lived on for generations.
أنا بقول لك مش قلنا لك يعني أجوا وطردونا بدنا نمنعهم هذا حكومة يعني الله يرضى عليك شو نسوي يعني هم بيجي في سلاح.
One of the most controversial projects is the proposed E1 settlement of 3,400 Jewish-only homes, which has been approved by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, despite widespread opposition. Critics see it as part of a plan to create a greater Israel. It's claimed E1 would complete a crescent of Israeli settlements around Jerusalem, separating the city from the rest of the West Bank, and make it very difficult to create a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital.
مشروع يعني تهجير أكثر من 12 تجمع فلسطيني موجودة شرقي القدس. هذا يعني أولا هو سيطرة وسرقة للجغرافيا الفلسطينية، بالإضافة إلى التأثير الديمغرافي الذي سيحرم الفلسطينيين من التواجد في مشروع. أيضا أقر به بناء أكثر من 3400 وحدة سكنية سيمتد إلى البحر الميت. لن يكون هناك تواجد لأي فلسطيني.
Israel seeks to annex the entire West Bank, a territory it refers to by its biblical names, Judea and Samaria, a move that US President Donald Trump, Israel's closest ally, has said he will not permit. Supporters of the controversial E1 plan argue that Palestinian concerns are overstated, claiming the project is necessary to provide additional housing for Jewish communities. However, they acknowledge it would serve as a strategic buffer to protect Jerusalem from potential attacks originating in the West Bank.
It's a housing development, and it does have an importance for Jerusalem. It helps Malah Adumim, of course, but it also keeps safe Jerusalem on the east, and we believe in it. We think Jerusalem should stay, of course, in Israeli hands.
Palestinians have welcomed growing support from the international community to recognize a Palestinian state. The UK, France, Canada and Australia were among those backing Palestine at a United Nations General Assembly in New York. China recognized the state of Palestine nearly 4 decades ago in 1988.
This shows that our policy is the right policy. And we urge the Americans to follow the British and the French and all these people which you mentioned to follow suit, because this is the only way for peace in the region, not just here in Palestine, but in the region.
Though impatient for change, demonstrations continue in the streets of Ramallah, the unofficial capital of the West Bank. At first, the city looks like any other, though barely hidden is a resentment that's quick to surface.
هلا اعترافهم بإقامة دولة فلسطينية نعم منيح جيد كويس منيح هذا من ضمن الضغط اللي فرضته الثورة الموجودة في غزة.
احنا اليوم هون لنقول للعالم انه على الأمم المتحدة ان تعمل واجبها وان
For many young Palestinians, opportunities may already be limited. Despite the ongoing conflict, higher education in the West Bank is flourishing, with a greater proportion of graduates than in much of the Arab world. Yet even for those with strong qualifications, escaping an economic reality shaped by the occupation remains a challenge. Strict Israeli controls on the movement of people and goods, combined with the frequent withholding of tax revenues intended for the Palestinian Authority, have significantly constrained the local economy. Many young people here in the West Bank find themselves in the diploma trap, where high education collides with high unemployment. It's leading to a loss of aspiration and, for many, a feeling of hopelessness. Salih spent 4 years at university to obtain a law degree and had dreams of earning a good salary working in international relations. But the only job she's been able to get is taking telephone orders for food delivery.
شعوري خلينا نكون صريحين وواضحين انه بعد ما الطالب يدرس 4 سنين ويعطي من قلبه للتخصص يتعب ويسهر ويكون في عنده طموح معين بده يوصل له وبالنهايه ينصدم بالواقع. خلينا نكون صريحين انه هو بيدرس مفكر انه الوظيفه رح.
Omar studied media at college but had to drop out when he could no longer afford the fees. He now earns a tiny wage working at a car wash.
أنا بلاقي الحل أدور على شغل في الداخل أو هان أو بقدم هجرة عشان نكمل الحياة يعني أسوي اللي بدي إياه وهي.
Meanwhile, many living in Israel feel under constant threat from extremists in the West Bank. Gun and knife attacks on Israeli civilians and security patrols are frequent. Around 50 Israelis have been killed in Palestinian attacks in Israel and the West Bank since the conflict in Gaza began. Gunfire rang out during the night near our hotel, though we never learned the source, just the night sounds of a region far from peace. Those fears became all too real when 2 gunmen from the West Bank opened fire on a crowded bus in Jerusalem, killing 6 Israelis and injuring 21. The 2 attackers were shot dead, seen as terrorists by Israel, but considered martyrs by some in Palestine. This is why life here unfolds amid constant military checkpoints and raids by the Israeli army. Residents face detentions, roadblocks, home demolitions and revoked work permits. Travel into the West Bank is straightforward. Travel from the West Bank into Israel will mean security checks. His desk littered with home demolition orders signed by Israel. A local mayor says the level of military activity has been stepped up.
طبعا ازدادت وتيرة العمل الأخيرة أو الأحداث الأخيرة نتيجة هي سياسة ممنهجة للاحتلال يعني مش سياسة خلينا نحكي هي فرضة أمر واقع أو وليدة اللحظة أو وليدة الصدفة لا هي سياسة ممتدة من سنين يعني قطرنا ما يعني عانت بموضوع الأعمال العسكرية من نتيجة الحدث هذا لا على مدار السنين عانت بهذا الموضوع من استهداف أرض مصادرة أرض من هدم بيوت من اعتقالات من
Many believe the only hope for lasting peace between Israel and Palestine is for them to live side by side in equal status, the so-called two-state solution. However, the path to a two-state solution is being steadily eroded by expanding settlements, persistent violence and profound distrust. While there are international calls for peace, a decisive mechanism for change remains absent. When the destruction of homes, economic despair, and a loss of future become daily realities, the very foundation for peace is disappearing.